I never imagined my life's work would end with public humiliation. The conference room fell silent as Amanda, my daughter-in-law of 3 years, stood at the head of the table in her designer suit. Her voice cut like glass. "We don't want outdated people in the company." 40 years of dedication dismissed in 10 cruel words. As I packed my personal items, I looked her in the eye, smiled calmly, and said, "Good luck." That's when my son Jason walked through the door holding papers that would change everything. Frank and I started Reynolds Technology Solutions in our garage in 1982 with nothing but determination and a single computer. We worked 18-hour days while raising our son Jason, sacrificing vacations and luxuries to build something meaningful. By the time Frank died of a heart attack 5 years ago, we had grown from 2 employees to over 300, with offices in 4 states. Our data security software protected some of the largest corporations in America. Frank's death devastated us both. Jason had just finished his MBA and joined the company 3 years prior, working his way through various departments to learn the business from the ground up. We leaned on each other during those dark days, and I stayed on as Chief Financial Officer while Jason grew into his role as Chief Operations Officer. The board respected our family's vision and values, and the company continued to thrive. When Jason met Amanda at an industry conference, I was thrilled. He had focused solely on work since his father's death, and seeing him smile again warmed my heart. Amanda was beautiful, charming, and seemed to share our passion for the business. She had impressive credentials, Stanford MBA, experience at several tech giants, and a charismatic presence that drew people in. Their courtship was whirlwind fast, and within 6 months they were married. Initially, Amanda was everything a mother-in-law could hope for. She brought fresh energy into our family, hosted holiday gatherings at their new home, and showed interest in the company's history. She joined Reynolds as marketing director and admittedly brought innovative ideas to our somewhat traditional approach. The first year was harmonious, with Sunday dinners and genuine laughter. The shift happened so gradually, I barely noticed it. Amanda began making comments about outdated systems and old-school thinking in management meetings. She would interrupt me mid-sentence to offer more current perspectives. When I presented our quarterly financial strategies, she would visibly sigh or check her phone. Small disrespects accumulated like paper cuts. Then, 8 months ago, Jason started experiencing mysterious health problems. Fatigue, confusion, occasional tremors in his hands. Doctors ordered tests, recommended rest, and suggested stepping back from work temporarily. The board needed to appoint an interim leader to handle Jason's responsibilities. As CFO with 40 years of experience, I was the logical choice. I still remember the shock when board chairman George Patterson called to inform me they had unanimously voted for Amanda to serve as interim CEO instead. "We need someone with fresh perspectives who understands today's digital marketplace," he explained awkwardly. "The board feels Amanda represents the future direction of Reynolds." I swallowed my hurt and concentrated on supporting Jason's recovery while handling the company finances. Then, last week, while reviewing marketing expenditure reports Amanda had submitted, I noticed discrepancies. Several large payments to consulting firms I'd never heard of, with vague service descriptions. When I cross-referenced bank records, I discovered these firms had been incorporated just months earlier, with addresses that led to empty offices. I compiled the evidence to present to the board, scheduling a meeting for Monday. But Amanda moved faster than I anticipated. Friday morning, she called an all-staff meeting to discuss organizational restructuring. I had no idea I was about to become the first casualty of that restructuring, as I arranged the few personal items from my office into a cardboard box, family photos, Frank's fountain pen, the crystal paperweight Jason gave me for my 60th birthday. I wondered how everything had unraveled so quickly. Then I saw Jason's face as he entered the conference room, holding a folder of papers and looking more clear-eyed and determined than he had in months. The days following my public firing were a blur of disbelief and pain. 40 years of building a company, of knowing every employee by name, of maintaining Frank's legacy, all stripped away in minutes. I drove home in silence, the cardboard box on my passenger seat, a pitiful representation of my career. My house felt empty and cavernous. I wandered from room to room, replaying Amanda's words and the faces of colleagues who had averted their eyes. Some had worked with me for decades, yet not one person spoke up. Fear is a powerful silencer. By evening, anger had replaced shock. I was not some obsolete relic to be discarded. I had guided Reynolds through recessions, technological revolutions, and competitors' attacks. Our security software was my intellectual creation as much as Frank's. How dare this newcomer erase my contributions? After a sleepless night, I called Dorothy Sullivan, our corporate legal counsel and my friend of 30 years. We arranged to meet at a small cafe 20 miles from the office, away from prying eyes. Dorothy arrived wearing large sunglasses despite the cloudy day, glancing around nervously before sitting. "I shouldn't be here," she whispered, removing her glasses. Her eyes were rimmed red. "Amanda has people watching all the executives. 2 were let go this morning for loyalty concerns." "Dorothy, what's happening? The board wouldn't just let her fire me without cause." "I was preparing to show them evidence of financial irregularities." She nodded grimly. Amanda anticipated that. For the past 3 months, she's been feeding the board altered performance reports, showing the financial department, specifically your work, as increasingly problematic. She claimed you were hiding declining numbers to protect your position. My stomach dropped. "That's absurd. Our numbers have been strong. We can prove that." She replaced the financial analysis team with her people 2 months ago. They're the ones presenting the data now. Dorothy slid a USB drive across the table. "This contains the actual reports before her team modified them. I've been keeping copies, knowing something wasn't right." I stared at the tiny device. Why would the board believe her over me? Patterson has known me for 20 years. Because she's also been wining and dining them individually, convincing them the company needs radical transformation to survive. She's painted you as resistant to necessary change, trapped in outdated thinking. And Dorothy hesitated. "What?" "She's been isolating Jason. When board members ask about him, she describes his condition as worse than it is. She's controlling all communication with him, claiming he needs rest without stress. No one has actually spoken directly with Jason in weeks." My blood ran cold. Jason had stopped returning my calls, communicating only through brief texts that didn't sound like him. Amanda had insisted his doctors recommended limiting visitors, even his own mother. "There's more," Dorothy continued, lowering her voice further. "Several employees have reported seeing Amanda meeting with executives from Data Shield." "Our biggest competitor?" My mind raced. Data Shield had been trying to acquire our customer base for years. Yes. Nothing concrete, but these meetings weren't on any official calendar. As Dorothy spoke, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Reynolds, this is Terry from accounting. Several of us want to help. Amanda doesn't know about the backup servers in the old building. Your access code still works. Go tonight." I showed Dorothy the message. "Be careful," she warned. "But this might be your only chance to gather evidence before she wipes everything clean." That night, dressed in black with a baseball cap pulled low, I drove to our original office building. Now used mainly for storage, the small brick structure held decades of backup files. My hands trembled as I punched in my access code, half expecting alarms to sound. The door clicked open. The musty room contained rows of servers humming in the darkness. I found the terminal and logged in, relieved that my credentials still worked. Hours passed as I downloaded financial records, emails, and board presentations onto external drives. As dawn approached, I discovered what Amanda had been hiding. She had created elaborate false trails showing financial mismanagement under my watch, while simultaneously transferring small but significant amounts to offshore accounts. But the most damning evidence was a series of emails between Amanda and Data Shield executives, discussing the transfer of our proprietary security algorithms in exchange for a leadership position and significant stock options. She wasn't just pushing me out. She was planning to hollow out Reynolds' technology from within and hand our life's work to our greatest competitor. As I drove home with the evidence secured, a new text arrived, this one from Jason's private number, the one he used before his illness. "Mom, we need to talk. Not at your house or mine. The fishing cabin. Tomorrow, noon. Come alone, and don't tell anyone. I've discovered something about Amanda." For the first time since my firing, I felt a flicker of hope. My son was reaching out independently. Whatever game Amanda was playing, she hadn't completely won yet. The family fishing cabin sat on 20 acres of woodland beside a small lake, 3 hours from the city. Frank bought it when Jason was 10, creating our refuge from the demands of building the business. We'd spent summer weekends there teaching Jason to fish, roasting marshmallows, and watching meteor showers from the dock. After Frank died, neither Jason nor I had the heart to visit much. I arrived early, sweeping away cobwebs and dust, wondering if I should have brought food. When a car approached, I tensed, peering through the window. Relief flooded me at the sight of my son walking slowly toward the cabin, alone. I hardly recognized him. Jason had lost at least 30 pounds. His clothes hung loosely on his frame, and his complexion had a grayish tinge. Dark circles underscored bloodshot eyes, and his hands shook slightly as he hugged me. "Mom," he said hoarsely. "I'm sorry about what happened. I didn't know she was going to fire you. I've been confused lately. The medications." "Sit down, sweetheart." I guided him to the worn sofa. "When did you last eat?" "I'm not sure. Amanda manages my meals and medicines. Says it's too much for me to track with my condition." Alarm bells rang in my head. "What exactly is your condition?" The doctors gave me different stories each time I called. Jason frowned. "They diagnosed early-onset Parkinson's initially, then changed it to chronic fatigue syndrome with neurological complications. The specialists Amanda found said traditional treatments weren't working, so they've been trying experimental protocols." "Which specialists?" "At which hospital?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "Private doctors. They come to the house. Amanda says it's better for my immune system to avoid hospitals." He rubbed his forehead. "Everything's foggy most of the time. But last week, I forgot to take my evening medication. The next morning, I felt more clear-headed than I had in months." My heart pounded. "What happened?" "I pretended to take the pills but hid them. After 3 days, my tremors almost stopped. I could think again. That's when I found financial documents Amanda had hidden in her home office. Mom, she's been systematically draining company resources. And there's something else." He pulled out his phone, showing me photos of prescription bottles. "These aren't what she tells me they are. I researched them. One is a powerful sedative. Another causes memory issues and confusion." The realization hit like a physical blow. "She's been drugging you, keeping you ill to maintain control." Jason nodded, tears filling his eyes. "I thought she loved me. Now I realize she only wanted what I represent, access to Reynolds. I overheard her on the phone saying the old woman is finally gone and once we push through the Data Shield deal we'll be set for life." We spent hours comparing notes. I showed him the evidence I'd gathered about financial discrepancies and corporate espionage. He revealed the extent of Amanda's isolation tactics, changing his phone settings to block calls, editing emails, even telling friends he was too sick for visitors. "We need to move carefully," I cautioned. "If she realizes you're onto her, you could be in danger, and we need solid proof before approaching law enforcement or the board." Jason agreed to see a doctor I trusted for blood tests, and to document the medications he'd been given. We set up a secure communication system and made plans to gather more evidence. As he prepared to leave, Jason hugged me tightly. I should have seen through her. Dad would be so disappointed in me. "No," I said firmly. "Your father would be proud of your strength in fighting back. We're going to reclaim what's ours, Jason, together." After he left, I began making calls to trusted contacts in the industry. Under the guise of seeking new opportunities, I inquired about Amanda's background. By evening, disturbing information emerged. Amanda Parker wasn't her original name. 5 years earlier, she was Amanda Wilson, married to the owner of a successful biotech firm in Seattle that mysteriously folded amid allegations of intellectual property theft. Before that, she was Amanda Reeves, briefly wed to a wealthy real estate developer who lost everything in suspicious investment schemes. She was a predator who had targeted our family and company as her next conquest. And now that I knew her pattern, I could begin to understand her endgame and how to stop her. The following week brought more disturbing revelations. My former assistant, Sarah, risked her job to secretly meet me, bringing copies of documents showing Amanda had created a shell corporation called AP Innovations, Reynolds' most valuable intellectual property security protocols, client encryption tools, and proprietary algorithms had been quietly transferred to this entity, which Amanda solely owned. She's stripping the company bare, Sarah explained. Moving assets before anyone realizes what's happening. Word around the office is she's pushing for a merger with Data Shield, presenting it as a strategic partnership when it's really a fire sale. How soon? I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. Board vote is scheduled in 3 weeks. She's promised incredible returns, stock options, and executive positions for those who support the deal. 3 weeks. The clock was ticking on 40 years of work, on my son's inheritance, on hundreds of employees' livelihoods. I needed to move faster than I'd planned. That night, as I organized the mounting evidence, my phone rang Jason's doctor. Mrs. Reynolds, I've completed the blood work. You need to get your son away from that woman immediately. The levels of benzodiazepines and other controlled substances in his system are dangerously high. There's also evidence of long-term administration of medications that mimic Parkinson's symptoms. This isn't just malpractice, it's criminal poisoning. The next day, I hired a private investigator recommended by Dorothy. His background in fraud cases and corporate espionage made him ideal for our situation. Within days, he'd compiled a dossier on Amanda's true history, including criminal complaints that were mysteriously dropped, sealed records from previous marriages, and evidence she had never actually graduated from Stanford, as she claimed. Most shocking was his discovery about her current marriage to Jason. She's still legally married to her second husband, he reported. The divorce was never finalized. Technically, her marriage to your son isn't legally valid. The pieces were falling into place. Amanda wasn't just a con artist. She was a dangerous criminal who had systematically targeted my son, our company, and me. She had poisoned Jason, isolated him from support, manufactured illness to control him, falsified company records, committed corporate espionage, and was now preparing to sell off our company's assets before disappearing with millions. As fury burned through me, I reminded myself that anger alone wouldn't save Reynolds Technologies or my son. I needed strategy, evidence, and allies. The young woman who had smiled so sweetly at our family dinners while plotting our destruction had no idea who she was truly dealing with. I hadn't built a successful technology company by being naive or weak. It was time to show Amanda exactly who she had underestimated. Amanda worked quickly in the weeks following my dismissal. Through my network of loyal employees, I learned she had replaced 6 department heads with her own people and relocated the executive offices to the top floor, restricting access with new security protocols. Board members received daily updates showing remarkable short-term profit increases achieved by slashing research budgets and delaying vendor payments. Meanwhile, Jason's condition appeared to deteriorate publicly. Amanda posted sympathetic social media updates about caring for her increasingly disabled husband while stepping up to save his family's struggling company. She portrayed herself as a devoted wife, making difficult business decisions while supporting a seriously ill spouse. The narrative was compelling and completely false. In reality, Jason was slowly recovering at a secure medical facility under an assumed name. After receiving the doctor's report, we had executed a careful plan to extract him from Amanda's control. Using the pretense of a specialized treatment center Amanda had researched, Jason agreed to be transported by medical staff, actually, private security personnel I had hired. Once safely away, he began detoxing from the cocktail of drugs in his system. The process was brutal. For days, Jason suffered withdrawal symptoms, tremors, anxiety, night terrors, and cognitive confusion. I stayed by his side through the worst of it, holding his hand as his body fought to regain balance. The medical team monitored him constantly, documenting everything for eventual legal proceedings. "I can't believe I didn't see what was happening," Jason said during a moment of clarity. "She always had a logical explanation for everything: why I needed to change doctors, why certain board members couldn't visit, why only she should handle my medication. Manipulation is insidious," I told him. "It happens gradually, with each step seeming reasonable, until you're suddenly in dangerous territory without realizing how you got there." As Jason's mind cleared, his anger grew. Amanda had stolen years of his life, endangered his health, and betrayed his trust in the most fundamental ways. She had also attacked the company his father built, the legacy that should have been his to carry forward. "We have to stop her before the merger vote," he insisted. "If Data Shield absorbs Reynolds, everything Mom and Dad worked for disappears." According to our sources, Amanda had scheduled the vote for Friday afternoon, just 10 days away. She had already secured tentative support from a majority of board members through a combination of misleading financial projections, promises of lucrative positions in the new organization, and subtle threats regarding their own past indiscretions, which she had carefully documented. We needed irrefutable evidence and a plan that would expose Amanda without damaging the company further. The private investigator had uncovered Amanda's previous identities and criminal history. Dorothy had compiled documentation of financial manipulation and corporate governance violations. Jason's doctors had prepared medical testimony about his systematic poisoning, but presenting this information required careful timing and strategy. Then came a critical break. Terry, from accounting, discovered Amanda had ordered the transfer of our core intellectual property, the encryption algorithms that were the heart of our security software, to servers controlled by Data Shield, scheduled for the night before the board vote. This transfer would give our competitor access to technology worth billions, developed over decades, regardless of how the vote turned out. "She's hedging her bets," Jason realized. "If the merger somehow fails, she'll have already delivered the most valuable assets to Data Shield in exchange for her golden parachute." This discovery accelerated our timeline. We couldn't wait until the board meeting. We needed to act before the transfer occurred. With Jason still recovering, I met with our core team, Dorothy, the private investigator, 2 trusted board members who had grown suspicious of Amanda's claims, and 3 senior engineers who remained loyal to the Reynolds family. Together, we developed a multi-layered plan. First, the engineers would create a honeypot, a fake version of our proprietary code that would appear legitimate but contain hidden tracking mechanisms. If transferred and implemented, it would self-corrupt while simultaneously documenting who accessed it. Second, Dorothy would prepare legal injunctions based on corporate governance violations, ready to file the moment we had proof of Amanda's attempted theft. Third, the private investigator would complete his dossier on Amanda's criminal history, including sworn statements from victims of her previous schemes. Finally, Jason and I would prepare to address the board, with medical evidence of his poisoning and documentation of Amanda's systematic campaign to seize control of Reynolds Technologies. As our team dispersed to execute their tasks, my phone buzzed with an unexpected text from George Patterson, the board chairman. "Need to speak privately. Meeting Amanda for dinner tonight at Carlton Hotel to discuss concerns. Something feels off about merger numbers. We'll call afterward." I felt a flicker of hope. George had been Frank's friend before becoming a board member. Despite being initially swayed by Amanda's manipulations, his financial instincts appeared to be raising alarms. Hours later, as I reviewed documents with Dorothy in my home office, my phone rang. "Caitlin, it's George." His voice sounded shaken. "I just left dinner with Amanda. You were right to be concerned." When I questioned certain projections, she became defensive, then tried to distract me with personal revelations about board members, things no one should know. When that didn't work, she suggested my health issues might make retirement a wise choice before the merger. It felt like a threat. It was, I confirmed. She's done the same to others. "There's more," he continued. She left her tablet at the table when she went to the restroom. The screen showed emails with Data Shield executives discussing post-merger elimination of redundant personnel, which included most of our senior staff and research team. "This isn't a merger of equals. It's a wholesale acquisition designed to strip Reynolds bare. We're working to stop it, George. Can you help delay the vote? I've already called for additional financial review, citing fiduciary duty concerns. That buys us 3 days, maybe 4. But Caitlin," his voice lowered, she mentioned. "Jason's health has taken a serious downturn, said he might need residential care soon." The way she said it chilled me. After we hung up, I immediately called Jason's security team to increase protective measures. Amanda was growing desperate as her plan faced unexpected obstacles. A desperate predator is at its most dangerous. That night, unable to sleep, I sat in my home office, surrounded by photos of Frank, Jason, and the company we'd built. One picture showed the 3 of us at the company's 25th anniversary celebration. Champagne glasses raised in triumph, faces glowing with shared pride. Frank's words from that evening echoed in my memory. "Success isn't measured by what you accumulate, but by what you build that outlasts you." What we had built was under attack by someone who saw it only as something to consume and discard. Amanda didn't understand that Reynolds Technologies wasn't just servers and software and profit margins. It was people and relationships and innovation born from shared purpose. She couldn't grasp that its true value lay in its integrity, not just its intellectual property. As dawn broke, my resolve hardened. This wasn't just about saving a company or seeking justice for what Amanda had done to Jason and me. It was about protecting Frank's legacy and the future he had imagined for his family and the hundreds of people who depended on Reynolds Technologies for their livelihoods. Amanda had declared war on everything I held dear. Now she would discover exactly how formidable an opponent an outdated woman could be. The next 3 days unfolded in a carefully choreographed sequence of moves and countermoves. While Amanda scrambled to address Chairman Patterson's concerns about the merger financials, our team worked around the clock, gathering evidence and preparing our response. The private investigator delivered his completed report on Amanda's history, a devastating document revealing a pattern of identity changes, fraudulent credentials, strategic marriages to wealthy men, and businesses mysteriously gutted of assets before collapsing. 2 of her former husbands had died under circumstances initially ruled natural but questionable enough to warrant reopening investigations. Others had lost fortunes and reputations, with some still rebuilding their lives years later. "She's refined her methods with each target," the investigator explained. "The early cons were relatively crude, gaining trust, securing access to accounts, then transferring assets before disappearing. With Reynolds, she's executing her most sophisticated operation, yet a full corporate infiltration designed to extract maximum value while creating the appearance of legitimate business strategy." Dorothy reviewed the legal implications. "We have multiple criminal and civil charges supported by evidence. Identity fraud, practicing medicine without a license, assault through poisoning, corporate espionage, wire fraud, and attempted theft of intellectual property. The marriage to Jason being legally invalid due to her existing marriage adds bigamy charges and invalidates any spousal rights to company shares." The technical team reported the honeypot was in place. If Amanda proceeded with the planned transfer of intellectual property to DataShield, we would have definitive evidence of corporate espionage. Jason's recovery continued steadily. The doctors confirmed that with the poisonous medications eliminated from his system, he should regain full health with no permanent damage. His determination to confront Amanda grew stronger daily. "She took advantage of my grief over Dad's death," he said during one of our strategy sessions. "I was vulnerable, focusing on work instead of processing the loss. She studied me, learned my weaknesses, then presented herself as exactly what I needed." "That's what predators do," I reminded him. "They identify vulnerability and exploit it. Your only mistake was having a generous heart." Our most difficult challenge remained, the board members already aligned with Amanda. Many had committed to the merger based on falsified projections and personal incentives. Others feared the professional embarrassment of admitting they had been deceived. Dorothy suggested a carefully worded confidential memo to each board member, providing just enough information to raise serious concerns without revealing our full strategy. The message included a personal note from Jason, indicating his recovery and intention to address the board before any merger vote. Amanda's reaction was swift and revealing. Within hours of the memo's delivery, she called an emergency executive session for the following morning, attempting to force the merger vote before Jason could appear. 3 board members immediately contacted us, alarmed by this transparent attempt to circumvent proper governance. That evening, our security team intercepted an attempt to access the honeypot files originating from Amanda's home computer. The transfer included all core encryption algorithms, client databases, and proprietary security protocols. Digital fingerprints conclusively linked the transfer to both Amanda's personal devices and DataShield servers. "We've got her," the lead engineer confirmed. "The tracking code is active. Every keystroke, every access attempt is being recorded with timestamps and user identification. It's unimpeachable evidence of theft." With the final piece of evidence secured, we finalized our plan for the morning's confrontation. Law enforcement officials had been briefed and were prepared to act on our evidence. 2 federal agents would be present at the board meeting, though their identities would remain concealed until the appropriate moment. That night, I visited Frank's grave for the first time in months. The granite headstone gleamed in the moonlight as I placed fresh flowers beside it. "We're fixing this, Frank," I whispered. "Amanda thought she could destroy what we built, but she didn't understand what she was up against. Not just me, but everything you instilled in this company: integrity, resilience, and genuine relationships. Tomorrow, we reclaim it all." I felt a profound sense of peace as I left the cemetery. Whatever happened at tomorrow's meeting, I had done everything possible to protect what mattered most. Before dawn, I met Jason at the medical facility. Although still thinner than his healthy weight, the clarity had returned to his eyes, and his hands were steady as we reviewed our presentation one final time. The doctors confirmed he was strong enough to attend the meeting, though they insisted on monitoring his vitals throughout. "Are you ready for this?" I asked, as we prepared to leave. "Confronting Amanda will be difficult." Jason squared his shoulders in a gesture so like his father's that my heart clenched. "More than ready, Mom. She didn't just try to steal the company, she stole months of my life. She made me doubt my own mind, my body, even my relationship with you. Today isn't just about justice. It's about reclaiming who we are." As our car approached the Reynolds Technologies headquarters, I noticed unusual activity: security guards I didn't recognize stationed at entrances, and several board members huddled in concerned conversation outside the main doors. Dorothy met us in the parking garage, her expression grim. "Amanda's making her final move. She's locked down the executive floor and restricted access to the boardroom. Only those she's personally approved can enter. She's claiming security concerns related to Jason's health and potential irrational behavior from disgruntled former employees." "Meaning me," I said dryly. "Exactly. She's told the board Jason had a psychotic break and is now under psychiatric care, and that you've been making threats against the company." Jason's jaw tightened. How are we getting in? Dorothy smiled for the first time that morning. Chairman Patterson revoked her emergency protocols 20 minutes ago. Original security personnel are being reinstated as we speak. And she held up 3 key cards. These will get us to the executive floor regardless. As we rode the elevator to the top floor, I squeezed Jason's hand. Whatever happens next, remember we've already won the most important battle. You're healthy, we know the truth, and we're together. The elevator doors opened to reveal a scene of controlled chaos. Board members and executives stood in clusters, voices raised in confused debate. Amanda stood at the boardroom door, face flushed with anger as she argued with George Patterson. This meeting was called under my authority as CEO, she insisted. You cannot simply— Actually, I can, Patterson responded calmly. As board chairman, I have final authority over governance matters. And given the serious allegations raised, this meeting will proceed under modified protocols. She hadn't noticed us yet. We moved quietly along the perimeter of the room, allowing Patterson to continue distracting her. Dorothy nodded to 2 unassuming men in dark suits who moved subtly into position near Amanda. What allegations? More of Caitlin's desperate attempts to undermine me because she can't accept retirement? I've tolerated her interference out of respect for Jason, but— That would be difficult, Jason said clearly, stepping forward, considering you've been systematically poisoning me to prevent any interference. Amanda's head whipped around, her composure cracking at the sight of Jason alert, steady, and very much in command of his faculties. When she saw me beside him, the blood drained from her face. Jason, you shouldn't be here, your doctors said the new treatment requires strict isolation. You're not well enough for— For what, Amanda? For discovering you've been drugging me for months? For learning my supposed illness was entirely manufactured by you? For finding out my wife is actually still married to someone else and targeted me specifically to gain control of Reynolds Technologies? The room fell absolutely silent. Every eye fixed on Amanda as she struggled to regain control of the situation. These are ridiculous accusations. Your mother has clearly poisoned you against me during your vulnerable state. This is exactly why I've been protecting you from her influence. George, we need to call Jason's medical team immediately, and— That won't be necessary, I said, stepping forward with a folder. We have comprehensive blood work analysis showing dangerous levels of unprescribed medications in Jason's system. We have documentation of your meetings with unauthorized medical professionals. We have evidence of your systematic isolation tactics. And most importantly, I nodded to Dorothy, who distributed packets to each board member. We have conclusive proof of your attempt to transfer Reynolds' proprietary technology to DataShield last night, ahead of the merger you've been pushing so aggressively. Amanda's expression hardened as she abandoned the concerned wife act. You can't prove any connection between me and those transfers. And even if you could, as CEO, I have authority to explore strategic partnerships. The board has already— Actually, said one of the unassuming men in dark suits, stepping forward and opening a badge wallet, we can prove it. FBI Cybercrime Division, ma'am. The transfers were traced directly to your personal devices, and the routing patterns match previous corporate espionage cases we've been investigating for 2 years. Cases involving companies where you were previously employed under different names. The second agent moved forward. Amanda Parker, also known as Amanda Wilson, Amanda Reeves, and originally Melissa Blackwell, you're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, corporate espionage, assault, and attempted murder through poisoning. As the agents recited her rights, Amanda's composure finally shattered. She lunged toward Jason, screaming accusations. You ungrateful, pathetic excuse for a CEO. Your mother was destroying this company with her outdated thinking. I gave you everything, made you look competent when you were nothing but a daddy's boy playing businessman. Everything I did was to save Reynolds from your family's incompetence. The agents restrained her as she continued her tirade, revealing in her fury exactly what she had tried so carefully to hide: her contempt for the Reynolds family and the company we had built, her belief that she alone deserved to profit from our decades of work. As they led her away, still shouting threats and justifications, an odd sense of anticlimax settled over the room. The monster who had nearly destroyed our family and company was revealed as a deeply damaged, calculating woman whose elaborate schemes had finally collapsed. Chairman Patterson cleared his throat. "I believe this emergency session needs to address several urgent matters, chief among them the leadership of Reynolds Technologies going forward, and immediate steps to secure our intellectual property and client relationships." Jason stepped to the head of the board table, his voice steady. "I recommend we immediately appoint my mother, Caitlin Reynolds, as interim CEO while we conduct a thorough assessment of company status post-Amanda. No one understands this company's operations more comprehensively, and no one has demonstrated more loyalty to its true mission and values." The vote was unanimous. As board members surrounded us with questions and concerns, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Amanda had not destroyed us. She had not erased Frank's legacy or stolen Jason's birthright. The road to recovery would be challenging, but Reynolds Technologies would survive, strengthened by the trial it had endured. That night, as Jason and I shared a quiet dinner at my home, he raised his glass in a toast. "To Mom, the new interim CEO of Reynolds Technologies, who proved that experience and wisdom will always triumph over manipulation and greed." I clinked my glass against his. "And to my son, who found the strength to reclaim his health, his company, and his life." We had won the battle, but the war to rebuild Reynolds Technologies was just beginning. The aftermath of Amanda's arrest threw Reynolds Technologies into turmoil. Clients called demanding reassurance about their data security. Employees whispered anxiously in hallways. Competitors circled like sharks, spreading rumors of our imminent collapse to poach our best talent and customers. My first act as interim CEO was addressing the entire company. Standing at the podium Frank had used for 30 years, I didn't minimize the crisis or offer empty reassurances. "We've been betrayed by someone who gained our trust," I told the assembled staff. "The coming weeks will be challenging as we assess the damage and rebuild. I cannot promise there won't be difficult days ahead. What I can promise is complete transparency, decisions based on our core values, and recognition of the loyalty so many of you have shown during this ordeal. Reynolds was built to withstand storms. Together, we'll navigate this one." The honesty seemed to steady people. Many approached afterward with information about changes Amanda had implemented or concerns they'd been afraid to raise. The picture that emerged confirmed our worst fears. She had systematically undermined quality controls, diverted resources from critical research, and created a culture of fear that silenced internal critics. Jason and I worked 18-hour days reconstructing damaged systems and relationships. Each morning began with a leadership meeting to assess progress and prioritize the day's challenges. Each evening ended with a detailed review of what we'd accomplished and learned. The board granted us extraordinary authority to make rapid decisions without usual approval processes, essential for addressing the most urgent vulnerabilities Amanda had created. We used this power carefully, focusing first on securing intellectual property and stabilizing client relationships. 2 weeks after Amanda's arrest, we faced the first major test of our recovery. DataShield announced they were developing new security software remarkably similar to Reynolds' proprietary systems. The implied threat was clear. They would claim they'd developed similar technology independently, challenging our patents and core products. Jason suggested a bold counter-strategy. "We don't fight this in court, at least not immediately. We accelerate the release of our next-generation protocols, making their stolen information obsolete before they can implement it." "The Phoenix Project?" I asked, surprised. This research initiative had been Frank's passion before his death, an entirely new approach to encryption that had been deemed too experimental for immediate development. Jason nodded. Dad was right about its potential. Amanda shelved it because she couldn't steal what wasn't yet fully documented. But the research team kept working unofficially, using personal time. They're further along than anyone realized. We relocated our most brilliant engineers to a secure facility, providing resources to complete the Phoenix project in record time. When we announced the breakthrough 6 weeks later, Data Shield's executives were blindsided. Their stolen algorithms became worthless overnight, and their major clients began calling us instead. The personal side of recovery proved more challenging than the professional. Jason struggled with trust issues after Amanda's betrayal. How could he have missed the warning signs? Why had he been so easily manipulated? Late-night conversations in my office often turned from business strategy to these painful questions. I keep reviewing every interaction, trying to see where I should have known, he confessed during one such session. There were red flags moments when her response seemed off or her story changed slightly. But she always had a plausible explanation, and I wanted to believe her. We all did, I reminded him. Amanda studied us carefully before making her move. She identified vulnerabilities and exploited them methodically. Your grief over losing your father, my concern about being seen as holding on to power too long, the board's anxiety about technological disruption, she leveraged it all. Physical recovery brought its own challenges. As the drugs left Jason's system completely, he experienced mood swings and occasional cognitive foggy patches. The doctors assured us these symptoms would fade, but they complicated his ability to maintain the demanding schedule our crisis required. 3 months after Amanda's arrest, the prosecutor handling her case requested a meeting. The sterile conference room at the Justice Department felt appropriately impersonal for discussing the woman who had nearly destroyed our family and company. We have overwhelming evidence on the corporate espionage and fraud charges, the prosecutor explained. The poisoning charges are more challenging to prove definitively, as we'd need to demonstrate her direct administration of unprescribed medications. Currently, she's claiming Jason's symptoms were genuine and her medication management was based on doctors' recommendations. But we have the blood tests, Jason protested, and the bottles with her fingerprints, which she claims were legitimate prescriptions she was helping you manage. Without the doctors she hired testifying against her, it becomes more complicated. The prosecutor leaned forward. Here's our situation. Amanda has offered to plead guilty to the corporate espionage and fraud charges, accepting a 15-year sentence without parole if we drop the poisoning and attempted murder charges. She'll also provide complete information about the intellectual property transferred to Data Shield and other companies. Jason and I exchanged glances, silently weighing the options. 15 years was substantial, but it felt insufficient for what Amanda had done, not just the corporate crimes but the personal betrayal and physical harm. If we proceed to trial on all charges, the prosecutor continued, we're likely to win on the business crimes but have a harder fight on the poisoning charges. That means extensive testimony from both of you, medical experts, and a very public airing of extremely personal details. The process could take years with appeals, and the company would remain under that cloud the entire time, I realized. Exactly. Each new development would trigger another news cycle, more questions from clients and investors, ongoing association of Reynolds Technologies with this scandal. We requested time to consider the offer. That evening, Jason and I sat on my back porch, watching the sunset, wrestling with the decision. Part of me wants her to pay for everything she did, Jason admitted. The thought of her getting away with any aspect of what she did to me physically makes me furious. I understand, I said quietly. The mother in me wants the maximum punishment for anyone who harmed my child, but the business leader in you sees the pragmatic path. I nodded. Reynolds Technologies has already suffered significant damage. A prolonged, high-profile trial keeps the wound open. The plea deal gives us closure and lets us focus entirely on rebuilding. Jason was silent for several minutes, watching the colors deepen in the sky. Dad always said business decisions should be made with the head, not the heart, but personal decisions require both. This is both business and deeply personal, which is why it's so difficult. He sighed. The truth is, Amanda's already taken too much of our time, energy, and peace. Do we want to give her years more through a trial? 2 days later, we agreed to the plea deal. Amanda appeared in court, looking nothing like the polished executive who had fired me. Her designer clothes replaced by a prison jumpsuit, her confident demeanor eroded by months in detention. She avoided looking at us as she entered her guilty plea. As the judge confirmed the 15-year sentence, I studied the woman who had inflicted so much damage. Whatever driving forces had created Amanda's predatory nature, childhood trauma, inherent character flaws, or simple greed, she remained a mystery I would never fully understand. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions about our feelings regarding the sentence. Jason stepped to the microphones with a composed statement we had carefully prepared. Justice has been served through the legal system. Reynolds Technologies is now focused on innovation, growth, and continuing the legacy of excellence established by my parents. We have no further comment on Amanda Parker or the crimes to which she has admitted guilt. That evening, the Reynolds Technologies leadership team gathered at my home to celebrate the official end of what we had come to call the Amanda chapter. As champagne flowed and conversation turned to future projects, I noticed Jason slip away to the garden. I found him sitting on a bench beneath the maple tree Frank had planted when we bought the house. "Heavy thoughts?" I asked, joining him. "Mixed ones. Relief that it's over. Pride in how we've begun to turn things around. Gratitude for having you to navigate through this mess." He hesitated. "And honesty about my own role in creating vulnerability in the company. I let Amanda in. I gave her the platform to do damage. And you helped stop her and repair that damage," I reminded him. "The measure of a leader isn't avoiding all mistakes. It's how they respond when mistakes happen." Jason smiled slightly. "That sounds like something Dad would say." Because he did, many times. Frank understood that building something valuable means taking risks, trusting people, sometimes getting burned. The alternative is isolation and stagnation. We sat in comfortable silence as twilight deepened around us. Tomorrow would bring new challenges in rebuilding Reynolds Technologies. The company would never be exactly what it had been before Amanda. Perhaps it would be something stronger, more resilient, more innovative. The crisis had forced us to reevaluate every aspect of operations, creating opportunities for improvement we might have otherwise missed. Frank had always maintained that every setback contained the seed of future success, if you had the wisdom to nurture it. As I watched our leadership team through the window laughing, strategizing, united by shared purpose, I knew he would have approved of how we had faced this challenge. Amanda had failed to understand the true strength of Reynolds Technologies, not its software or client list or profit margins, but its foundation of relationships, integrity, and resilience. Those were the assets she could never steal, no matter how clever her schemes. 6 months after Amanda's sentencing, I stood at the podium in our newly renovated conference center, surveying the assembled employees, board members, clients, and press. The quarterly results displayed on screens around the room told a remarkable story of recovery. Client retention exceeding 90%, stock value rebounding to pre-Amanda levels, and the Phoenix project generating licensing interest beyond our most optimistic projections. When I addressed you 6 months ago, I began, I promised transparency through difficult times and decisions guided by our core values. Today marks the successful conclusion of our recovery initiative and the beginning of Reynolds Technologies' next chapter. Applause rippled through the audience. Many present had worked extraordinary hours to rebuild what Amanda had nearly destroyed. Their commitment had made the difference between the company's survival and its demise. As promised, when I accepted the role of interim CEO, I've completed a thorough assessment of our leadership needs going forward. It's now my pleasure to announce Reynolds Technologies' new permanent Chief Executive Officer. I gestured to Jason, who rose from his seat in the front row to join me at the podium. Fully recovered physically, he had emerged from the crisis with newfound confidence and depth. The difficult experience had accelerated his growth, as both a leader and a person. Jason Reynolds brings not only his father's vision and his own technological expertise to this role, but hard-won wisdom about building an organization that can withstand both external challenges and internal betrayals. The board has unanimously approved his appointment. The standing ovation lasted nearly a minute. As it subsided, I handed Jason the ceremonial key to the CEO's office, a tradition Frank had established decades earlier. "Thank you, Mom," he said quietly, then turned to address the gathering. Reynolds Technologies was founded on the principle that security means more than protection from external threats. It means creating systems people can truly trust. Recent events tested that foundation, but thanks to extraordinary efforts throughout our organization, we've emerged stronger. He outlined his vision for the company's future, expanding beyond software into comprehensive security consulting, leveraging the Phoenix Project to redefine industry standards, and establishing the Reynolds Institute for Ethical Technology to promote responsible innovation. My parents built this company on technical excellence, paired with unwavering integrity. That combination will remain our North Star as we move forward. After the formal presentations, we mingled with attendees during the reception. George Patterson approached with a glass of champagne and a wide smile. "Remarkable turnaround, Caitlin. When we discovered what Amanda had done, I feared we might not survive." "Frank always said the test of any system is how it performs under attack," I replied. "We discovered vulnerabilities we didn't know existed and addressed them. In some ways, Amanda did us a service, though certainly not the one she intended." Later, as the event wound down, Jason found me by the windows overlooking the city. "The board approved my recommendation for the new CFO position," he said. "I'd like to announce it next week." "Wonderful. Who's the lucky candidate?" "You." He handed me a formal offer letter. Not full-time, 3 days weekly, focusing on strategic financial planning rather than day-to-day operations. The role would draw on your experience while allowing you the partial retirement you were considering before everything happened with Amanda. I studied the proposal with surprise. "You're serious about this?" "Completely. The company needs your wisdom, Mom. I need your wisdom. But not at the cost of the life beyond work that you deserve after 40 years of building Reynolds. This arrangement gives us both what we need." The thoughtfulness of the offer touched me deeply. Jason had created a role that honored my contributions while acknowledging my desire to finally pursue interests beyond the company travel, mentoring female entrepreneurs, serving on nonprofit boards. "I accept," I said simply, embracing my son. 2 weeks later, an unexpected visitor was announced at my office. The prison administrator had forwarded a request from Amanda to meet with me. After careful consideration, I agreed to a supervised visit at the federal facility where she was serving her sentence. The woman who entered the sparse visitation room barely resembled the polished executive who had fired me. Prison had stripped away her designer wardrobe, perfect makeup, and practiced charm. Without those trappings, she seemed smaller, diminished. "Thank you for coming," she said, taking the seat across from me. "I'm sure your attorney advised against it." "They did. I'm curious what could possibly be worth saying after everything you've done." Amanda studied her hands. "I've had 9 months to think about why my plan failed. I analyzed every variable, every contingency I didn't adequately account for. Do you know what I concluded? I'm sure you'll tell me. You. You were the variable my calculations missed." She looked up, something like reluctant respect in her expression. "I underestimated you completely. I saw only an aging executive past her prime, emotionally attached to outdated ways of doing business. I never recognized the strategic intelligence behind your traditional exterior. That's the problem with seeing people as stereotypes rather than individuals," I observed. "You miss their true capabilities." "Indeed." She shifted uncomfortably. "I'm not seeking forgiveness or offering apologies. Neither would be sincere. But I wanted you to know that in 3 decades of similar operations, you're the only one who completely defeated me. That deserves acknowledgement." I considered her words carefully. Amanda remained a predator, one temporarily caged but unchanged in her fundamental nature. This meeting wasn't about remorse, but about her need to make sense of her failure. "You failed because you never understood what you were attacking," I told her. "You saw Reynolds Technologies as a collection of assets to strip and discard. You never recognized that its true value lay in relationships, built over decades, the trust between leadership and employees, the loyalty of clients who stayed with us through technological revolutions, the mutual respect among people who shared a mission beyond profit." Something flickered in her eyes, perhaps the first glimmer of understanding. "You built your identity on destruction, Amanda. We built ours on creation. That's a battle you could never win, regardless of your tactics." I stood, signaling the end of our meeting. "I didn't come for acknowledgement or to gloat over your downfall. I came to close this chapter completely, so that neither Reynolds Technologies nor my family need ever think about you again." As I turned to leave, she called after me, "He never really loved me, did he? Jason?" I paused at the door. "Jason loved who he thought you were. That person never existed except as your creation." Walking out of the prison into the bright autumn sunshine, I felt an unexpected sense of closure. Amanda would spend the next 15 years confined, while I had reclaimed not just my professional role, but my personal freedom and peace of mind. The company's quarterly executive retreat took place the following weekend at the lakeside fishing cabin, now renovated and expanded. Team members and their families gathered for strategic planning sessions, interspersed with fishing, hiking, and evening bonfires. On the final night, as stars appeared above the pines, Jason raised a toast before the assembled group. "To Reynolds Technologies' most valuable asset, the wisdom that comes from experience, the resilience that grows through challenges, and the vision that sees beyond immediate obstacles to lasting success." Glasses clinked as warm laughter rippled around the fire. Looking at the faces illuminated by flickering flames, dedicated professionals who had stood firm during our darkest days, I felt profound gratitude for the community we had built. Later, as conversations continued around the bonfire, I walked alone to the lake's edge. The water reflected a perfect crescent moon, its light creating a silver pathway across the gentle waves. Frank and I had stood in this exact spot decades earlier, dreaming of the company we would build, the legacy we would create for our son. Despite Amanda's best efforts, that legacy remained intact, transformed by crisis but not destroyed, tempered by challenge but not broken. Reynolds Technologies would continue to evolve under Jason's leadership, adapting to changing times while honoring its founding principles. As for me, I had discovered strengths I never knew I possessed. The woman Amanda dismissed as outdated had found reserves of courage, strategic thinking, and determination that defeated a practiced predator. The experience had taught me that wisdom isn't about age, but about applying life's lessons with clarity and purpose. I would continue contributing to Reynolds Technologies in my new role, but also expand my horizons beyond the company that had defined my life for 40 years. The world had changed dramatically since Frank and I started our business in a garage with a single computer. I looked forward to exploring it with fresh eyes, unburdened by crisis or obligation. My reflection smiled back at me from the moonlit water, the face of a woman who had faced her greatest challenge at an age when many expected her to step aside gracefully. Instead, I had fought for everything I valued and emerged victorious. Amanda's contemptuous words still echoed occasionally in my memory. "We don't want outdated people in the company." She had failed to understand that experience isn't outdated, it's invaluable. What appears as traditional thinking often rests on a foundation of proven principles that withstand fads and fashions. The true measure of wisdom is recognizing which traditions to preserve and which innovations to embrace, a balance Amanda's destructive ambition could never appreciate. That wisdom would continue guiding Reynolds Technologies long after her name faded from memory. I returned to the bonfire as Jason was organizing an impromptu talent show, laughter echoing through the trees. Taking my place in the circle of light and warmth, I savored the moment and the future it promised. a future secured, not despite my age and experience, but because of it. Have you ever faced someone who underestimated you because of your age or experience? How did you prove them wrong? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might find inspiration in fighting back against those who try to dismiss their value. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember that wisdom and resilience only grow stronger with time.